I'm Chris Lee, host of the Southeastern 14 podcast. Special guest today, Bill King. Bill's been a friend of mine for years. We have not had him on the podcast yet, but he is one of the best in the business at covering college football. I would encourage you to follow him on Twitter at Bill is King and check him out at the Bill King Show, which you can catch online or really at a number of stations in the Southeast. Bill, thanks for joining us today. It's getting really interesting in college football, and it's a really interesting week in the SEC in particular.
We call this time of year the sodium pentothal time. And if people are wondering, Bill, where are you going here? Back growing up watching the movies and the shows in like the 70s and 80s, they'd always have a show on and they were trying to get somebody to spill the truth. So they'd give him this shot of sodium pentothal. I don't even know if that's real. I don't think it is, but that's what they would use in the movies. So about 10 years ago, it just hit me. We're going to start using that phrase on the show. This month, as you know, we're going to start filtering out everybody, finding out where everybody stands. Now, we already know about some teams, maybe have a ruined season already, but this month is going to define this season.
Well, the filtering out process started in Baton Rouge weeks ago. LSU, of course, having a coaching search. I don't know how much any of us know about that. They've got an athletic director who swings for the fences and I think plays a lot of angles. Do you have any gut feeling as to where Scott Woodward settles on that hire?
I've got to think, without knowing the ranking order. First of all, we all know he wants Jimbo. He can't get Jimbo. There was a time Jimbo's dream job had been LSU, but the timing's never been good. And now he's got a $90-something million deal with A&M. They just gave him a raise. Now, there's no buyout there. That's the misnomer, but he's not leaving A&M. The timing's bad. I think that ship is forever sailed. So that choice, to me, is a 100% no-go. After that, I think the guy ascending, I don't know if he's in the one slot, but he's close, and that's Mel Tucker up at Michigan State. First of all, style of play, very physical style of play. Running back, the Kenneth Walker kid, who, by the way, is a Memphis area kid. That's a Tennessee kid who right now might be leading the Heisman Trophy polling out there. He's running up and down the field. They're a physical line of scrimmage team. He's a tough, just look at the guy. Look at his interviews. This is a tough guy. He's got a Saban background. To me, that sells. And he's in, you know he could recruit, which anybody should at LSU. I'd have him somewhere in there at the top, for sure.
Yeah, they've got a new president. I think minority hire is going to be, it sounds like it's going to be high on their list to interview someone in that vein there. I before you even said it, I was kind of thinking the same thing. It just makes so much sense in so many ways. You know, the stint at Georgia, I would think he's got recruiting. Obviously he has recruiting ties in the South if he's got that. I mean, he's probably going to flip a commit away from Vanderbilt this week and a kid who decommitted. So I'm with you. That's what I was thinking too. He's the guy without knowing anything else. He probably checks as many of the boxes as anyone.
Well, and without talking to him, I can tell you, if that job is offered, he's out of there as fast as possible. I mean, LSU is a golden gym job. It's a top 5 job. Last 3 coaches they've hired, 2 of them really aren't that good. Coach O and Les Miles won national championships there. Now, Nick did, and then got out 2 years later. We all know what he is and where he ranks, but that's one of the top places you can land on the planet Earth and win.
What do you make of the Dan Mullen situation at Florida? He's a guy who seems thin-skinned. I don't think he's been very well liked by the people that I have spoken to who've covered him. The recruiting thing has developed a narrative out there. I don't know that that's unfair. Where do you think this goes at Florida in the coming weeks? I mean, I think they could easily win their remaining 4 games, and 8-4, maybe that's enough. But what's your sense of where that's headed?
You know the irony? Urban Meyer, Jim McElwain, now Mullen, all melting down about year 4, year 5 at Florida. Think about that. Melting down. Now, in their own ways, you know. You had Meyer and the health thing and the overwork, and he was losing weight he wasn't eating. You had McElwain making stuff up, made up a death threat that turned out to be a big lie. He melted down, and now Mullen is melting down in front of us. He literally is. Now, let me give you a little background. Dan Mullen, when he was first at Florida, and they won 2 national championships in 06 and 08, and were easily good enough in 09 to do it again. Offensive coordinator there, very highly thought of, and did a good job. But the people I would talk to, because at the time I did not know him, I did get to know him a little bit after that. But they said, man, this guy, nobody likes him. They don't like being around him. He's hard to work with. He and Urban Meyer are not buddies, Bill. When they have parties, they don't get invited. They're not together. And he goes to Mississippi State, and he does a really good job. You got to remember now, the very first playoff ranking in 2014, the committee, the very first one ever, Mississippi State was ranked number 1 in the very first release. This guy did a heck of a job. But see, there, you sign mostly 3 stars. Sometimes you might get a 4, borderline 5-star, and you have to develop. It's a developmental program, and that's your formula there. See, at Florida, you sign Johnny 5-star, and then you coach Johnny 5-star, and you win championships. He doesn't get that half of the equation down there. He is not a recruiter. Let me tell you something. On that staff, Timmy Brewster, a guy I know real well, tight end coach down there, he is one of the best individual recruiters on this planet Earth. He first made his name back in the late 90s when he flipped Chris Sims out of New Jersey from Tennessee to Texas. He's the one that did that for Mac Brown. Guy's an incredible recruiter. He can't even recruit down there. They just lost their top 2 names in the last 2 weeks who decommitted and aren't coming back. Mullen doesn't get it, and he doesn't get the PR side of it, and he's floating again. I can promise. Remember last year all this NFL stuff started floating about him? I don't think there's an NFL team that wants to hire him to be the head coach. I'm not saying he couldn't do it, but I think that's being floated. I think he'd like to get out of there, maybe not for another college job, but I don't think this thing is long. They won't fire him this year, no matter what. But I think next year is very key.
That's interesting that you said that. I've never thought of it that way in terms of coaches melting down at that point. I mean, you might even go Ron Zook before that. I don't remember. That's been so long ago. I don't remember all the details. But there was just some places in the league like that. Tennessee's that way. You saw Butch Jones just lose his mind. You saw it kind of happen to Derek Dooley. And maybe you could argue LSU, Les Miles, and now Ed Orgeron. The pressure cooker of this league, just I don't know that it's made for everyone.
No, it's tough. We as outsiders look at the $6, $7, $8 million, whatever each one of them makes, and just say, "Hey, man, anybody can do that. Just put the money in my bank account." And you know what? We'd enjoy the money, but what that takes from your body, from your stress level, your family, and I mean, think about what McElwain went through when somebody has a picture of a shark, and we all know what that picture was, and it's not him.
That was the wildest thing ever. Yeah, you looked at it, and you're like, that's not him. Yeah.
Your wife's walking down the aisle of Publix, and somebody's going to stop her and mention it, right? Kids at school are going to get harassed. I mean, anyways, that's a good point. It's tough, and not everybody's like Saban. Saban, I think, can take his blood pressure. I think Saban's got like a knob on his arm where he can take his blood pressure and just turn it down to ease. Inside he's at peace. Now, he may not look like it outside, but he could just sit in that office 19 hours a day, breaking down film, never playing golf, never going to a social event. But that's 1 in a trillion guys that can do that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's half cyborg. I think the artificial intelligence thing started a long time ago, and he's just the football coaching dummy out there for that.
No question.
On the coaching front, I've always kind of got an eye on James Franklin. I don't think I think if opportunities opened up at a big-time SEC program, I've always thought he would entertain those. I think Southern Cal is one that he'd probably love to be in the middle of. I know this is a little bit off topic, but where do you see him going in the next couple years, or does he just wind up staying at Penn State?
No. This is on topic. Good stuff. Nobody likes their name floated for leverage more than James Franklin. James Franklin is at his dream job, going back there. And in 16, he won the Big Ten title. Remember, started off losing to Pittsburgh, got destroyed by Michigan, then won the Big Ten. Beat Ohio State in that famous game. Since then, they've been winning, but treading water a little bit, recruiting really well. That's James. Not well coached a lot of the times on the field. X's and O's, not his strength. And I don't know if he's to the point where, okay, this is my dream job, but I'm kind of grinding right now. And I'm on a stationary bike, and it's not moving. And I never thought he would entertain any other job on his own. He may this time. Now, I don't know if his resume is deteriorating some to where Southern Cal, you got to remember, they got a new AD from Cincinnati, where maybe they wouldn't be as interested as perhaps they would have been prior. I'm not sure about that. But I think he's probably more under the consideration stage in his own mind of maybe we do need to get out of here than he ever planned to be. That's unclear, though.
Let's switch to on the field. Whose surge are you buying into more right now, Auburn's or A&M's?
That is a heck of a game. I got that game in my one slot for this weekend.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
It is in College Station. And that counts. Yeah, that counts. And they're playing their best ball. From Alabama now, they're really playing. Defense has come around. And I would have to give A&M a slight edge. Now, I am pleasantly surprised by Auburn. I didn't think that was a good hire. And I'm not anti-Brian Harsin. I'm just saying, just put him in Opelika with no background here at all. So I was worried about that. But today, and even Bo Nix is playing good ball. And they've got Tank Bigsby, who's as good a running back as probably anybody has in college football. And their defense is playing pretty salty. But they got to go on the road there. And I think it's a really close game, but I can't pick Auburn to win that game. And Auburn gets Alabama in the Iron Bowl this year at home. That's not been the best place for Nick. I still don't think they're good enough to beat them. But I'm pleasantly surprised by Auburn today with a 6-2 record.
My concern for for Auburn, is that Tank Bigsby's been really up and down. I know that's not all his fault. I think some of that's on other things. But that defensive line that A&M's got, I mean, we talk about Georgia all the time, and they're phenomenal. But you hear some whispers sometimes that those guys at A&M are about as talented. That's what I'm concerned for Auburn. And that if they don't get that right, that puts a lot back on Bo Nix on the road.
You know, it's also ironic. It hit me about a year ago. You know what Bo Nix is? Is a very poor man's version of Johnny Manziel. His recklessness, running around out again. He's not. Don't anybody misunderstand me. He's not football Johnny. But that's his style. You know, he's reckless. He runs around. He throws the ball against his body. He throws the ball off his back foot. He double reverses 6 times when he's about to get sacked. Gives up 30 yards and then gets 40. That's his game. And these last few weeks, it's really worked for him. It hasn't cost him like many other times in the past. Yeah, that D-line. First of all, Mike Elko is a guy that I got to know when he was at Wake Forest. Clark Lee, Mike Elko together. And then they went to Notre Dame together, and we know the whole story. And then he left for the A&M money. But he's a really good defensive coordinator. I mean, he is right at the top of the list. And they're fundamentally sound. They're physical. As you mentioned, they've got talent. That defensive front's very stout. And they're really coming on. The offense has been more of a problem, actually, here more recently. But they've got a stud running back in Spiller. They've got a stud tight end. They've got stud receivers. And their offensive line is solid.
This one won't hit the national radar the way that one will, but I think it's a fascinating matchup, mostly because I don't know what to make of Mississippi State. And I look at Arkansas, I like what I see when I watch them. The computers don't like them for reasons I don't understand. Is that simply just the home team wins that one on Saturday?
If they don't get pressure on Will Rogers, who, let's just use the word quiet, When we think of quarterbacks in the league, we don't think of him per se. We know of him, but we don't think about him. This kid's playing some really good ball. And I knew they would. Mike Leach does not have 2 bad quarterback years. It's not possible. If one goes wrong or he's trying to sift through the quarterbacks and nobody's really taking it and he's really frustrated, that might last that year, but it won't last the next year. It's not possible. And that kid's playing some good ball. The other thing about Mississippi State is when you think of Mike Leach, other than 1 year at Washington State and then the 2008 year at Texas Tech, they're not known for defense because of the style of play with the offense, right? It's hard to have a stout defense the way they move it along offensively. But their defensively are pretty stout. And I'm telling you, they could beat Arkansas. I don't know that I would bet you on that, but it wouldn't be a shock or a surprise to me.
What do you make of the line move on Tennessee, Kentucky this week?
You know what? Now, that the gambling world, even though I have Brad Powers every Friday for the last hour, is not my PhD, but I know a lot about it through osmosis, okay? And according to Brad, that's pro money. That's not Joe Six-Pack money. That's the pro people who gamble to make a living, those guys. And that thing went from -5 Kentucky to -1 Tennessee. I haven't looked at it this morning, but apparently it was still -1. It's a 6-point move after the Open on Sunday. Saturday night, very cold weather. Of course, Lexington this time of year, that's what you're going to get, but nighttime. And Kentucky's limping a little bit here. They're still a well-coached team. But I just wonder where they are mentally. Tennessee actually is a very happy place. I know it hasn't been much happiness there steadily for about 20 years, not steadily. But this group seems to be having fun. And they know they have nothing to lose. I mean, lose another game, so what? You got the NCAA hovering over them. So they play loose, man. It's not like if you lose, we don't get to get something, right? So they've got a chance to pull that game off. They have a chance. Hendon Hooker running that hurry up, if that gets to Kentucky, and Kentucky's a little beat up on the D-line, that game could be interesting. I wouldn't have said that about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Josh Heupel has done a tremendous job there. I never understood why people was down on that hire as they were when it came down. Now, maybe the bar had been raised unrealistically through, John Gruden or by your crazy line, but you looked at his track record and what he'd done at Missouri. You looked at UCF. I'm like, I don't see like a red flag here that tells me this is awful. I never really understood why, I guess, the media at large was so down on that hire.
Well, you're probably right about the sex appeal meter. Might not have registered. He's not a real vocal guy on a microphone or anything. Kind of unassuming, but he is an offensive guru. That's not to be denied. And we know if you're right at Tennessee, you can recruit. Now, that's been a little bit of a problem because of lack of attention to the in-state players and many other things, NCAA problem that's still looming. But I think that was a pretty good hire. I do too. They've got a very good defensive coordinator there. They lost so many players, but they still have some playmakers. The offensive line looks a little bit better. And they're having fun. They could get to 6-6, which would get them in the Betty Crocker Bowl somewhere, right? A low-level bowl game. That'd be a heck of a year for them, frankly. It really would.
And on the other hand, Kentucky's in that territory where, you finish strong against a weak schedule. You're maybe looking New Year's Day type bowl. You stub your toe in this one and it probably looks differently. My concern for Kentucky is that's a team that has just exerted its identity on other people when it was going well for them. And frankly, the schedule had something to do with it. But Chris Rodriguez was running over people. That offensive line was pretty good. I look at Tennessee. That's a bunch that, as much as attention has been paid to their offense, the defense has done a good job at times. They've been stingy against the run at times. And it just seems like Kentucky's in a trend where people have figured out their run game. And I started this with, why do you think the lines move? Maybe the truth is right in front of us.
Yeah, and the quarterback's been a little bit shaky. So, and I don't know, look, we go from a month ago or 3 weeks ago, people saying, hey, it could be Kentucky or Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. And I think that's kind of gone now for them.
Yeah, I don't think they're that level of team. The computers really have not liked them for a while. It's just when you start 6-0, voters tend to look at that number to the right of the dash, and that makes up a lot of people's minds on where to slot people. But there were always some flaws there kind of from the beginning if you watched them and paid attention.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. The Florida win, a lot of people pat them on the back for that, and that was a good win. Not denying that, but probably not as impressive today as we were a few weeks ago. Now, that's a couple of times in a row they've beaten them up there, but yeah, I still think Stoops has done a marvelous job there, though, regardless of what may or may not happen next few weeks. And I know some staff members there, they love it. I mean, you hear the behind-the-scenes harmony there. They love it. They love working there. They love working for Stoops. They like the university. They like the way they're able to assemble talent. Kentucky overall, I can just tell you, is a very happy place in general right now in football.
Yeah, and see, I'm glad you brought that up, Bill. That's a question I get a lot. Is he going to be on the radar for a bigger job? And I think the happiness quotient matters. And that's a place where you can win 8 or 9 games, and if you do it, people are over the moon. They always schedule pretty well. It's that northernmost SEC team where you can dip into Ohio and places like that and get players. See, to me, that's one of these things that if I'm Mark Stoops, I value that a lot. I mean, I'm sure he'll get a look for a bigger job at some point. But if I'm him, for all the stuff that you said, I don't know that I leave.
He's making $6+ million. That'll go a long way up in Lexington. You're not under any pressure to win more, or you got to go. Let's say, and if you want him, I think the buyout's about $20 million. That's a pretty big number now. So I just don't see it happening. Now, let's just say some big, powerful, historic brand comes and calls him, and then you move your family there. Let's say instead of 6.5, they pay you 8. And then every day your wife's got to hear, if you don't win tomorrow, you're probably going to have to put your house up for sale and get out of this town. I'm with you. I'd rather be comfortable in Lexington.
Hugh Freeze has his homecoming at Oxford on Saturday. How weird is that going to be?
Yeah, it's awkward. That's awkward because he was a good coach. And the exit was humiliating. And I don't know if I've told you this story. I told it on the radio. About 3 years ago, whenever it was, Hugh was out of coaching a couple of years. I get him, he's DMing me during my show. Live on the show, I'm checking Twitter while I'm talking, and it's Hugh. Hugh had heard that I commented on, he'd been at Liberty, ironically, this is well before he ever took that job, to speak. It's a speaking engagement. And I wrote something about how I didn't trust his authenticity. So he DMs me during the show, says, I saw what you put, Bill. I'll be available today at 2:00. Call me and we'll get to know each other a little bit better, which I found very odd. Okay. First of all, I'm not calling you to get to know you. And I replied, and again, I'm literally on the air talking live. And I DM, I said, why don't you just come on the show? I promise I won't ambush you. I'm not looking to be the shock guy to embarrass. And I wouldn't have. I would have been very reasonable. And he replied to me and said, Bill, I would, but if I come on your show, then Mama and the girls, his daughters, are going to have a meltdown, and feelings are going to be hurt again, and I just can't do it. And I said, I totally get that. I totally get it. And again, I didn't call him that day at 2, but so I was kind of part of the awkwardness there and a little exchange with you one morning. But look, he's doing a good job, and I don't think that there's anything in the Southeastern Conference for him, even though he's not nearly as radioactive. I think he's pretty clear from what happened. But I've always said, first of all, Hugh Freeze is a ridiculously good recruiter. And he's a ridiculously good X's and O's guy. He's both. I've always said, if and when they fire Justin Fuente, which I think we're approaching that area, you give Hugh Freeze that brand, which has not been good since Beamer Ball. And you understand that stretch of property from the Virginias to the Carolinas on up to New Jersey through D.C., that stretch of real estate is as fertile with players as anywhere on the planet you can go. And if anybody can take a job like Virginia Tech or Maryland, not a lot of history at Maryland, as we know, and just own it. Just go in there and own it. You could go to Nick Saban or to Georgia or Ohio State and look them right in the eye and say, my guy's as good as yours. Let's play. And I would think about Hugh Freeze for that Virginia Tech job. I really would. I think he's ready. I think the past is distant enough, and I think he would do well. And here's the other item. You're going in a league where even Clemson's not Clemson anymore. There's nobody taking control of that league anymore. There is boundless real estate for you to go in there and steal. That's what I would really think about that.
I'll add another thing, Bill. Have you ever been to Blacksburg?
Yes, I did a Vanderbilt game.
Oh, okay. That would be a long time ago. Yeah, but I mean, here's my point.
Jerry DiNardo.
Well, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and I think what Hugh Freeze needs is a place like that where you can win and be under the radar rather than Florida or Penn State or just, I'm picking schools that are known commodities and powerhouses out of a hat, not for purpose, just for example's sake. I think I never thought about that till you mentioned it, but I think you're right. I think that would be a perfect type situation for him.
He would flourish. I really think he would. And you can recruit to Virginia Tech. You flat out can. I mean, and I'm telling you, that stretch of real estate I just mentioned, that might be the best defensive tackle, like defensive end stretch in America. What comes out of there is just silly. It's so good. But you can get quarterbacks, receivers, offensive linemen. Everything is there in bundles through that stretch. He'd win. And again, that league, Clemson's broken right now. I mean, that offense is absolutely bankrupt, and I am astonished he got to that point there.
Yeah, I am too. Switching back to Ole Miss for just a second, though. Yeah. I think Ole Miss is about a 9.5-point favorite. It's not out of the realm of possibility with that quarterback play in particular that Liberty wins that game. If Liberty goes in there and pulls an upset, does that fan base have a big meltdown? I mean, I know they're still kind of in the honeymoon phase with Lane Kiffin, but to me, that's one of those I'm just really interested to see what happens if Liberty wins that game.
Let me explain this. Ole Miss right now, despite the most recent loss, with Lane Kiffin, that fan base, and I'd say the media per se, but the fan base, they're in a hypnotic state over Lane Kiffin. He's better than Johnny Vaught. Not that anybody there probably remembers other than the name, but they love him. I mean, they love him unconditionally, and he's done a good job. And he's not the spoiled brat he was, for example, in 2009 when he was at Tennessee. He's matured from there. He still has fun on Twitter, but he's not the brat he used to be. And he's done a heck of a job with Matt Corral, that offense and everything, and the defense is much improved. But if they lose this game to Hugh Freeze, I think everybody comes out of their trance. Now, he's not going to be in any trouble, but that would be a big buzzkill right there if that happens. And you're right, Malik Willis transferring from Auburn, and he has been very good at Liberty.
All right, I got two last questions for you. We've not really talked Alabama yet. Odds that Alabama gets in the playoff as a 2-loss team would be what?
10%, maybe.
Too many undefeated teams left, right?
Well, that and first of all, just to clear it up, nobody has the brand awareness of Alabama, and nobody gets the benefit of the doubt like Alabama. There's Alabama, and then there's a huge gap, and then there's 2, 3, 4, 5. When it comes to benefit of the doubt, committee, what have you. So they've got that. Nobody's going to get more benefit of the doubt. We were going over scenarios. Let's say the Georgia game is close, and they lose on a 50-yard field goal with no time on the clock by 1 point. Just some crazy. the two losses, I don't know if the committee's got the guts to go there. I still would probably think they're a top 4 team. And we already know Cincinnati's not getting in. And I just don't see it happening. Now, if somebody gets in with 2 losses, it would be Alabama. But I still would place it at 10% or less. Now, when they eventually expand, which they are 100% going to, it's just they're in a fight over who gets to make up the rules and everything, then we'll have a lot of room for 2 lost teams. Basically that'll do. When we expand to 12, which will happen within the next 4 years, let's say, 3-4 years, Alabama gets in every year as long as Nick Saban's there, right?
Oh, it
every
has
year.
to, yeah. In his worst year, they would be in the playoff in that scenario, other than year 1, where they went 7-6 or whatever, lost to ULM. But like even that team that I think that lost 3 games, that team's in a 12-team playoff.
Oh, and let me take this conversation a step further. Do you want to play a 3-loss Alabama team where they totally ticked off Nick Saban with time to prepare?
Oh, heck no.
And do or die. Do or die.
No, I think I'd rather have bamboo shoots under my nails than that.
Yeah, do or die right there. That'd be tough. I'm praying that 10 years from now, I'm watching an 80-year-old Nick Saban under those circumstances. That's my number 1 wish list. If anybody can get me something for Christmas, get me that.
Hey, I don't know that he's going to make it to 80, but I've heard this, and you probably have too. I heard his batteries really got recharged last year, that he missed the fans, all the stuff that went with the game day stuff. And you look at him this year, Bill, he's a different guy. The mood around him is lighter. He enjoys himself more. He smiles more. He's not... I'm not going to say he was like at war with the media, but you know what I mean. Those press conferences always seem like you were 5 seconds away from setting him off. I just watch him from afar. He's a different guy now, he seems to me.
I agree. He's settled down a little bit. And I don't know what year, but it's recent. Last few years, he had a bad hip. It was killing him. It was really bothering him. And he got that fixed. He got a hip replacement. And I know he's a lot happier there, too. You get that age and you have, knee or something that's got to be fixed. And I know just physically he feels and looks a lot better.
Last topic for today, and for context for people listening, Bill and I both live in the Nashville area or just outside it. Does Vandy ever get this mess fixed, Bill?
I don't think so. I mean, I've got 50 years of Vandy as a kid. I was at the Frank Mordecai game. Was that 78 when he went for all those yards, 300 yards or whatever? I mean, I've been there. I've seen it all. And that crowd, and I'm not saying the crowd from last week represents the future, but it represents where they're at. And I'm happy. For the first time ever, let me say this. I totally believe Vanderbilt is throwing serious money at this. I don't think all these other lies in the past, which obviously were lies, not now. They are really throwing just hundreds of millions at it. That's good. But that doesn't necessarily fix it. It makes it easier to sell. But the product on the field, Chris, I think this is the worst I've ever seen Vanderbilt.
Hey, Bill, let me stop you. Did you see the Sagrins this week? Did you see where they were? They were 150. They were below Monmouth and Incarnate Word, which I was not even aware had football programs.
By the way, I had a buddy who's now walking at Tennessee. A buddy's kid go to Incarnate Word. It's in San Antonio. Yeah, it's a lower level. Yeah, absolutely. I've never seen it worse. And Vanderbilt, I was talking about this the other day on the show. Vanderbilt thinks they can sell, this degree, which is a fantastic degree, and the city. 18-year-olds aren't thinking about that. 18-year-olds want to win. And they want to play too, which you can go there and play quick. But selling Nashville at 18, I mean, I didn't care about that stuff. I didn't care about, that degree. And it's an awesome degree. I cared about, you got to sell football, guys. And that's hard. It's hard at Vanderbilt. And, I was, Kurt Pay's a good friend of mine. I was at Vanderbilt in '84. Remember, he was the first 2,000-yard passer. Beat Alabama that year. I mean, I've seen the James Franklin peak years. I've seen it good, and I've seen God-forsaken. '82. Let me tell you the '82 story really quick. I'm in college. Tennessee Vanderbilt game. Back then, everybody went to that game. You could not get tickets for that game, and Vanderbilt ended up 8-4 that year. I tried to get tickets early. You couldn't get any tickets. They opened up Memorial Gym and put a closed-circuit TV in there in 1982, and that's where I went in there. And driving rainstorm, huge rainstorm, and I went in there and watched the game. Memorial Gym. I don't know that that's ever happened before or since, but that's where Vanderbilt was at that time, and everybody in this town and around tried to get in that game.
Well, let me give you the contrast. I was at the Missouri game last week in the press box. I'm going to guess there were probably 9,000 to 12,000 fans there. I'd put it at probably 10, 5, or 11, right in the middle. And it was probably 55% Vanderbilt. That's how bad it has gotten.
So it was only about half Vanderbilt of the 9,000 to 11,500.
Yeah,
Wow.
and do the math. There's probably 6,000 Vanderbilt fans in the stands, would be my guess. Now, look, when both teams are wearing black and gold, it's a little bit harder to say, but that opposite side from the press box now is basically all opposing fans. And, of course, Missouri, those people are not real sky high about the program right now, so you figured it was coming. But I guess in terms of getting it turned around, you know, I keep hearing the things about the money. I'm puzzled why they don't get more out in front of it. Although that's kind of Vanderbilt's way. They're just, they never think to publicize good news. We could do a whole podcast on that one. But my concern for them, it's not just the money. I wonder if, and this is where, as a new president, you have to really be careful about the battles you fight. They still need stuff like priority registration for kids, better access to summer school. That last one depends on who you talk to. But I wonder if they're ever going to be willing. You can't play football on 5 to 6 hours of sleep on average during the week, and that's what those kids are doing over there. I've talked to too many of them, and that's the place where I think the president has got to fight a war against his own academic people. I don't know if war is the right word, but he's certainly got to take that up and be willing to win it before they ever get that right.
Yeah, this is probably not the right analogy, but I heard this as a kid. You can't be, you can't be Harvard Monday through Friday and Alabama on Saturday. You just can't.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that Vanderbilt needs to become, a junior college. I'm just saying, those are hard to mesh up. They're hard to marry. And, look, I like Clark Lee. Clark Lee might be the best adjustment during the game defensive coordinator that I've seen the last X number of years, what he did at Notre Dame. And he had some good talent, really good talent to work with. But, I mean, you watched the beginning of their games, and it was like Clark was feeling out the other team. Halftime, any of the problems that existed were gone. I mean, he was remarkable doing that up there. And, I don't know what that means regarding application to the Vanderbilt job, but he is a national guy. Went to school just up the street in Montgomery Bell Academy, and, he's got more passion than probably anybody. Most Vanderbilt coaches, Watson Brown aside, you hire them, and they don't have any skin in the game, historically. And I'm not saying you have to have a Vanderbilt guy, but I don't know if anybody is going to put more into it than he will. I don't think eventually it'll be a good ending, but they've got that going for them, and apparently they're spending money on all these assistants. So,
well, and the one last thing on him, I'll say, I want to get your opinion.
Sure.
Can you name another SEC program, heck, maybe even Power 5, in the last 15 years that had less in the way of speed and explosiveness than that roster's got right now?
No. Now, Arkansas a couple of years ago was really bad. I mean, they deteriorated down to nothing and couldn't win an SEC game there for a long stretch. But they're big picture, they're somewhat fixed. I'm trying to, sort through some teams, but just ignoring one loss, with some teams. Let's say the coach is fired and you're playing your last 3 games and everybody's quit basically on the field. You see that. That happens. But if you're just saying, Bill, pure roster ability, I've never seen it this low at any school in the SEC.
Yeah, I would have to go back to about what Bobby Johnson took over to start to get to the point of speed and athleticism. But I think, I'm with you, I don't think they've quit. I just don't think he's got much in the way of players. And when that's the case, they should not have lost to ETSU. They should show better. Frankly, their offense should play better than it does. But this wasn't going to be a fix to where, and some of their fans thought, hey, they can win six games and get to a bowl. I'm like, if that's what you're thinking, then you need to have your eyes checked.
Yeah, and this is off the topic, but my son plays with the Wade twins, who are superstars. And I was kind of hoping Vandy would get in on them. I'm sure they tried, but those kids, the outside linebacker is a Sunday player. And the quarterback isn't ultimately a quarterback, but he's an SEC athlete. And they're both 6'3", 6'4", one's 218, one's 230. And the quarterback in high school is Vince Young. That's his style. And the outside linebacker is, you just named a superstar outside linebacker. All right, the outside linebacker would play for Alabama. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, and just for our audience, those kids are both going to Kentucky, so you get another feather in the cap for Mark Stoops. So,
yep.
Bill, I've kept you a while. I know you're busy getting ready for your weekend. Tell folks where they can find your shows and all that stuff.
Yeah, you can go to the WNSR app, and you can pull it up there every morning, 6 to 9 Central Time. You can follow me at Billis King on Twitter. And try and find me on the radio somewhere, just up and down the dial. But easiest way is to pull up that app, and you can run that through your car, your radio. I have people, guy the other day calling me from traffic in Boca Raton. We're everywhere. A guy called me from New Zealand the other day, big Oklahoma fan. So that's what we do, and that's how you find us.
Bill, that was a ton of fun. Let's do it again.
I would. Yeah, I'll do it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of The 14. We'll be back with more episodes again next week.